Hello and welcome to my channel. In this one I'm going to do a small simple drawing of a duckling using charcoal. Let's start. The paper I'm going to be working on is the Fabriano sketching paper. I'm going to do a quick sketch with an HB graphite pencil and then I'm going to switch to charcoal. The size of the paper is the usual 9 times 11 inches or so, but the drawing itself is not going to be very large because I plan to do another vignette. I like to do these vignettes in charcoal, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now, just a few words about the shape of my main subject and the composition. So in my reference photo we can't see the feet, so I decided maybe I should add those, or at least have one of them visible. The duckling is in the grass and I'll have to decide how much of the detail from the background I'll have to include. And speaking of the background, I'm starting to work on that by shading it using vine charcoal. So I switched to charcoal now, and I'm going to be using vine charcoal for the shading for the most part. So vine charcoal, just like willow charcoal, is soft natural charcoal that's created by burning pieces of wood. It's these marks that I'm putting down are actually very easy to modify. You can push them around, you can push the material around with a brush or with a paper tissue or something, or with your finger for that matter. You can easily add more or take away value or erase it, so it doesn't really stick to the surface of the paper, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because you can move the material around, creating some painterly effects and manipulating the amount of value as needed. It's a bad thing because sometimes you want the charcoal dust to stick so that it will move when you start working on other areas. For those cases, it's better to use a charcoal pencil. A charcoal pencil is made out of compressed charcoal and it has some binders in there, so it's a little bit darker and it will stick to the paper a little bit more. Right now I'm still working with that piece of vine charcoal, doing a little bit more work on the background. Here I finally switched to a charcoal pencil and I'm using a medium charcoal pencil. It's a woodless charcoal pencil. I usually use these Master's Touch woodless charcoal pencils, usually the medium and the soft grade. The medium charcoal pencil is my main drawing tool, and I only use the soft charcoal pencil sparingly for some of the darkest details. Like here, for example, on the eye, I may use a touch of that soft charcoal pencil, but for the most part I will use a medium charcoal pencil. That's because it's dark enough. It's a lot darker in comparison to the vine charcoal. Anyway, I am now working on the head and the beak. The beak will actually be a little bit tricky. The reason is because I need to create contrast between the main subject and the background, where the background is darker than the main subject. And the beak itself has its light side and its shadow side. So this tip of the beak, which is facing away from the light source, which is coming from above, and the side of the beak as well, is a little bit darker, so it's in the shadow. But that shadow area, even though it's darker than the top side of the beak, still needs to be lighter than the background. So here you will see me reapplying vine charcoal to some parts of the background because I because I needed to create that contrast. Here I used a pencil eraser. This is a Kohinoor pencil eraser to define the upper edge of that beak to make it stand out against the background. Now I'm back to using vine charcoal to draw these tiny feathers and to shade the darker areas of the duckling's head. So as you can see, some parts of the duckling's body and the head will be a little bit darker than others because they're facing away from the light source. And this part here around the neck, under the head, appears to be one of the darker areas. So I applied a little bit more charcoal, vine charcoal there, and then I blended it with a brush. But because I felt that I needed something a little bit more permanent and even darker, I started throwing in a bit of charcoal pencil as well. And a charcoal pencil, like I said, is a little bit darker, but it also produces a bit more texture, which is also not necessarily a bad thing, because I can use that texture to imitate the appearance of really, really short, tiny feathers. As you can see, I was also playing around with the background to see if I could create some shapes that kind of looked like grass, but I would always go over them with a brush because I didn't want the background to be too distracting, so I just wanted it to create contrast with the lighter parts of the main subject. I'm not really trying to draw every single blade of grass. I don't want the drawing to be that detailed, and honestly I can't really be bothered to do that. So I want to focus on the duckling, and I want the drawing to appear realistic because of the larger contrast, the contrast between the larger lighter and darker areas. Just going back in with this eraser, this pencil eraser, and drawing some smaller, lighter marks with it. Like for example, this short feathers, these short feathers on the top of the head that look like tiny, fluffy hairs. The pencil eraser is convenient because you can use it just like a pencil. You can also sharpen it like a pencil, not exactly to a very sharp fine tip, but you can sharpen it so that you can get smaller, finer marks and work with a little bit more precision. So you can use it in a similar way that you use a pencil, because with a pencil you draw darker marks and darker shapes, but with an eraser you can draw lighter marks and lighter shapes. Sometimes I use a kneaded eraser, or a kneadable eraser, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I use a pencil eraser, sometimes I use a mechanical Tombow Mono Zero eraser, which pretty much does the same thing as the Kohinoor pencil eraser. And sometimes I use a combination of a kneaded eraser and a precision eraser, whatever. Anyway, here I'm working on those short feathers on the top of the head and around the eye, and you can see now that I'm establishing the contrast between the light side of the head, which is at the top and a little bit to the right, and the darker side of the head, which is facing down and a little bit to the left. The reference, in case I forgot to mention, is going to be in the description, and you can examine it and analyze how I adapted to it. I think I simplified it a little bit. Not so much the main subject, but the background. The background will be quite a bit simpler in my drawing. And I also don't plan to draw all the way to the edge of the paper. I want this to be a vignette. The reason why I like vignettes is because not necessarily because I'm lazy and I don't want to draw on the whole surface of the paper, but because I think they actually look better, because they allow you to focus on the elements you want to include and just exclude the stuff that you're not interested in or don't feel like drawing, and that basically makes for better looking drawings and better looking compositions as well. I will talk a little bit more about vignettes and composition once I do a little bit more of this drawing. Right now I'm just I just did a little bit of the background to the left and the head of the main subject, but once I do a little bit more of the body and I start working on the rest of the background, we can talk a little bit more about the composition. Anyway, I'm just doing some more shading and some more blending on this left side of the body, which is darker than which is a little bit darker because it's facing away from the light source. And here again I'm using the pencil eraser to draw some of these lighter feathers around the edge of the body to the left. Now the interesting thing here is that these tiny feathers here, they're not completely white, and maybe my marks will be a little bit lighter than they are in the reference, but the thing is that I don't really have a way to control the exact amount of value. All I want to do is establish the contrast between the light side and the shadow side, and if I need to make those tiny feathers a little bit darker, maybe I can go over them gently with a brush, but I don't want to ruin the shapes. Anyway, I'm working around the feet now, and here I'm going in with a charcoal pencil because I need more contrast and I need a darker value because I'm expecting the grass or the ground, whatever it is, under the duckling's body to be darker because of the shadow. So I'm going to put down some medium charcoal pencil there and then shade the rest of that lower area with a piece of vine charcoal, just like I did with the rest of the background, and then kind of blend these two together. And for blending, occasionally I will switch to a harder brush. This is a bristle brush, which I sometimes like to use in order to push the charcoal deeper into the grain of the paper, but most of the time I will use these softer synthetic brushes to move the material gently over the surface of the paper. So I like to use a variety of blending tools, erasing tools and drawing tools when working with charcoal. I just think that they all have their advantages and disadvantages, and it's better to have more options. With an eraser here at the bottom I'm drawing some lighter blades of grass which are popping into the scene, and that's going to be the lower edge of my vignette. I'm going to soften all of these with a brush because I don't want them to be too well defined. I don't want very clean defined edges there because I think it would be a little bit too distracting in comparison to my main subject. Just doing a little bit of work here at the bottom, and now I need to do a little bit of work on the top part of the background here to make it a little bit darker, to create more contrast with the top part of the body, which is lighter because it's facing the light source. Here I started doing a little bit of work on the body, adding some details, doing some shading with a combination of a piece of vine charcoal and a charcoal pencil, and then I'm blending that together with a brush. Here I'm using a technique that I like to use with charcoal, which is just put down a little bit of charcoal and then push the charcoal dust onto the lighter areas. It's a very quick and easy way of shading where you don't have to shade the whole thing. You just shade some of the darker areas and then push the dust away from them onto the lighter areas. That way I establish some base value. I can always go back in, like I'm doing here, just sort of refine some details, add some more texture or more value as needed, or I can go back in with an eraser and maybe take away value, add some lighter details, whatever is needed. So I'm using a combination of a charcoal pencil and vine charcoal for that. Every now and then I will soften some of these marks with a brush to fluff them up, to fluff up the feathers a little bit, make them look softer and gentler, and to integrate some of those darker lines a little bit better into the rest of that fluffy coat of feathers. Anyway, here at the top I am using the pencil eraser again for some of the lighter feathers, which will stand out against that darker background. And I don't really need to try to draw every single feather. I can just sort of make a few marks here, a few marks there, and with a few suggestions I can create an illusion like I've drawn many smaller shapes, many smaller feathers. It's the same thing that I do when I draw fur. With charcoal, it's really up to you if you want to make it a bit more impressionistic or a bit more realistic, because you can actually do both. In some of my earlier charcoal work, I tried to make it as realistic as possible until I sort of learned to relax and understood the fact that with charcoal one of the best things is the fact that you can create some of these lovely painterly effects and not even worry about some of the smaller details, just focusing on the larger relationships. Anyway, I'm doing some more work on the background here and there, just finishing the rest of my vignette. Now I wanted to say a few more words about vignettes as I'm finishing the shape of it. The good thing about vignettes is that they can help you balance out the composition of your drawings, because you don't draw all the way to the edge of the paper. So let's say that your sketch is a little bit off, or maybe the placement of some of the elements is a little bit off. By creating a vignette like this, you decide how much of it you're going to shade, how much of the paper you're going to fill, and you can kind of modify some of the imbalances by just adding a little bit more on one side, a little bit less on the other, and that way you can create a more balanced looking overall shape and a more balanced looking composition. Anyway, I'm fading those edges, and here at the bottom I'm going to add some more of those blades of grass which are popping into the view. I don't need to make these overly detailed either. I just need a few of them kind of overlapping and popping into the scene, just so that the viewer gets the idea that the duckling is in that grassy area. And I soften that area with a brush as well. I'm just going to add a few more touches with the pencil eraser to fluff up the tail a little bit, because I think it needed to curve up a little bit, and I softened the background a bit with a larger brush because I felt that, I don't know, there was a little bit too much variation in there. I simplified it a little bit. I don't want it to be distracting. And here I'm just putting down some finishing touches on my main subject, the duck. I'm almost done here. I'm going to put my signature here on the right side with a charcoal pencil, of course. And then maybe just add a few more finishing touches here and there, here around the eye maybe. And around the feet to add a little bit more shadow there. Lift up a little bit of charcoal on the tail, just some minor adjustments here and there. Anyway, the drawing is pretty much done. I'm just going to fix the shape of the feet here, just define the edge a little bit better. The drawing is pretty much done. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe. Check out my other videos. I need those views, guys. And for longer videos and more content, be sure to check out my Patreon. You'll find lots of full-length videos there. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.